let's say that you're a manager, director, leader of some type, and you want to equip your staff to do housing problem solving. How do you go about it?
So if you're trying to help your staff do this kind of work, or if you're trying to do this kind of work in your organization, get your organization built for this, the first thing I would say is you want to empower your staff. And what I mean by that is we talk about empowering the people who are experiencing homelessness or housing instability, but staff need to feel like they can use their authentic voice and they can share their judgment, right, in order to help someone figure something out, right? I talked a lot about this is not about eligibility. You do not have to be eligible for a human conversation, right? And you don't know when that human conversation might wind up being the difference in someone's housing story, right? So we empower staff by trusting them, by giving them the time they need to sit down with people, and by understanding that even if that conversation didn't work, that doesn't mean that that staff member failed, right? Or is doing a bad job. And we also empower them by making sure that they're trained, right? That they know how to sit in an uncomfortable conversation and talk about housing and keep it positive and urgent at the same time. The second thing I would say is, of course, if you have the capacity to fund this or have some flexible funding to do this kind of work, it does make a big difference. We find that it doesn't take a lot of money, right, to make a big difference. And that for staff, just knowing that a small pot of money might be there can really motivate them to try and have a conversation like this. We see funding for this come from many state level resources, right? So it might be that you have state money for this. I have communities that reapportion some of their rapid rehousing money to do this work. A lot of communities use ESG money or emergency shelter grants to be able to do this. And so sometimes it's an allocation of where you want that money to be. And what we find is that there's just a big bang for your buck in terms of helping somebody avoid experiencing homelessness versus those down the line costs of an expensive shelter stay, rapid rehousing, or permanent supportive housing. Those costs are much higher than if we can help somebody with utility bills so they don't lose your unit, or mediate with a family member or a friend and provide a little bit of assistance to help them stay there. And I know a lot of communities out there are probably thinking, we don't have any money for this, right? And I get it, I know. But what I would like to say is that sometimes housing problem solving funding doesn't have the title housing problem solving funding on it. I'll give an example. A lot of communities have utility bill assistance, right? At a state level, or their utility company has it. One of my favorite stories was there was a grandma who wanted to house her son and her son's kids, but she's on a fixed income. And so she has to drop them off at shelter, and they have a conversation. And she says, look, I would love for my grandkids to stay with me, but when they're all in my house, my utility bills triple, and I'm on a fixed income. And if the lights go out, I know that child services can get involved. And we were able to connect her quickly to a utility assistance program that helped pay those light bills, right? And work with her son at the same time on a plan to increase income in the home. So it was really better for her and for everybody involved, and they stayed housed. And there was no housing problem solving funding spent, but there was money going into that home. We see that a lot with TANF, food stamps, all sorts of existing resources in the community that, help to make the resource pot a little bit bigger in these homes that are struggling. 50% of homes reported last year that if they had a $500 emergency, they wouldn't be able to pay it without going into debt or requesting or assistance from a family member or friend. So it's not surprising that small amounts of money from our resources make a big difference. One of the biggest resources we target is being able to offer first month's rent and security deposit on a place of your own. And the idea there is not that you're 2 weeks from experiencing homelessness and I'm going to be able to find an apartment and pay for it right now. It's that if you're able to go stay with your cousin or your uncle or your mom or your friend from work, right? They might be really hesitant to give you time to stay. But if we can show them that we are building a plan, right? That you have a resource, that there's reason to believe that there's a next step through that first month's rent security deposit, they might be more willing to open their home just for the time being, because it takes time to find an apartment.
And then the shelter bed is still open for somebody who really needs it, who doesn't have any other option. And all of the stories that you've told involve smaller expenditures of money on the part of the homeless response system than shelter and voucher and housing assistance. Sarah Day, thank you so much for this conversation. It has been fascinating. I've learned a lot. I can't wait to share it with people. And if people want to learn more about your work, what should they do?
So I know that a lot of people out there are doing the hard work of trying to implement this in their organizations and communities. And I just want you to know that I am always here to help. And if you want to chat about any of this, please reach out. My website is www.diversionfirst.org. And you can find me and connect to me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks for having me.